In the early hours of October 12, 2021, the city of Kofu in Yamanashi Prefecture, Japan, was peacefully sleeping. At 3:50 a.m., a resident was suddenly awakened by a loud explosion. Then, the sound of burning wood echoed clearly in his ears. He went to the window and saw the neighboring Inoue family's house engulfed in fierce flames. Fire and black smoke were gradually consuming the entire house. Just 10 minutes earlier, this resident had heard strange noises coming from the Inoue house, but he was too sleepy to pay attention. Little did he know that a fire would break out now. The neighbor hurriedly called to report the fire, praying in his heart that the entire Inoue family would be safe and sound. After calling the police, he quickly went outside to see if he could help. By this time, other neighbors had also discovered the situation, but the fire was already too large, so everyone was helpless and could only wait for the firefighters to arrive. Surprisingly, police cars arrived at the scene before the fire trucks. With them were two girls, who turned out to be the daughters of the Inoue family, whose house was on fire. The older sister was named Keiko Inoue, 17 years old, a 12th grade student. The younger sister was named Riko Inoue, 14 years old, in 9th grade. It turned out that a few minutes before the house caught fire, Keiko and Riko were sleeping on the second floor when they vaguely heard strange noises from downstairs. The younger sister Riko thought their parents were arguing and wanted to go down to intervene. When she went downstairs, the scene before her eyes terrified her to the extreme. She saw a strange man standing there holding a knife, while her mother was lying motionless on the floor. Faced with this scene, Riko ran away immediately. But the man quickly caught the girl and raised his knife to strike her head forcefully. In this dangerous situation, Riko struggled fiercely, avoiding the knife and knocking it out of the man's hand. Then she ran upstairs at full speed. Strangely, the man did not chase after her. Riko returned to her bedroom on the second floor in panic, locked the door, and told her older sister Keiko about what had just happened downstairs. After hearing this, Keiko also felt very scared. But after thinking calmly, she realized that hiding in the room was useless at this point. Because her younger sister was injured, they needed to leave the house as soon as possible. It was now 3:45 a.m. The two sisters Keiko and Riko decided to act quickly. With extraordinary courage, they jumped from the second-floor balcony onto the roof of the adjacent carport, then carefully jumped to the ground. Fear overwhelmed them, making them forget to put on shoes, running barefoot on the quiet streets. Only when they had run a considerable distance and felt temporarily safe, did the sisters dare to stop. With trembling hands, Keiko took out the phone she had brought from home and called the police. Her voice choked as she recounted that a burglar had broken into their house, their parents might be in danger, and the perpetrator was still in the house. Although they had called the police, the two sisters still felt uneasy because Riko's head wound was bleeding. In the quiet night, they continued to run barefoot on the street. Later they reached a 24-hour convenience store about 1,640 feet from their house and told the store clerk about what had just happened. After hearing this, the clerk hurriedly took out medical supplies to bandage Riko's wound. The two sisters were too scared to go home, so they stayed at the store waiting for the police to arrive. Not long after, through the glass of the convenience store, the two sisters fearfully saw a bright orange-red flame rising in the sky not far away. At this point, they still didn't know what was happening. It wasn't until the police arrived and took them back home that they realized the burning house was their own. Shortly after the police arrived at the scene, the firefighters also arrived. While extinguishing the fire, the police began searching for witnesses and suspicious people around the area. A police officer discovered a suspicious man nearby, but when he was about to approach and question him, the man ran away. Around 7 a.m. when it was light outside, the fire was finally extinguished. Because it was a wooden house and the fire was so large, almost the entire house was completely burned down, with only some of the first-floor frames left standing and about to collapse. Even the first floor of the neighboring house was affected. Afterward, the police cordoned off the scene. After the fire was extinguished, the scene of the fire appeared like a tragic battlefield. The destructive power of the fire, along with the large amount of water used to extinguish it, had destroyed many important pieces of evidence. However, through careful searching, investigators discovered several gas canisters at the scene, a clear sign that this was a deliberate arson. Among the blackened ruins, the police found 2 charred bodies. Notably, both victims were lying straight, with no signs of contortion. This discovery led to a hypothesis. It was very likely that these 2 victims had died before the fire occurred. Although their faces were difficult to recognize, they were likely to be Mr. and Mrs. Inoue. The forensic results later confirmed that they were Mr. Morigi Inoue and Mrs. Akie Inoue, the owners of the house. The autopsy results showed that both victims had more than 10 deep stab wounds to their internal organs, and the cause of death was excessive blood loss. The younger daughter Riko was also injured, with a dent in her skull and a 2-inch-long wound from her forehead to the top of her head. The male victim was Mr. Morigi Inoue, 55 years old, an employee of a construction engineering company. He had a serious and calm personality and loved his 2 daughters very much. Whenever neighbors praised his daughters for resembling him, his serious face would break into a happy smile. The female victim was Mrs. Akie Inoue, 50 years old, who worked as a nurse. She had been the head of the community committee. People around her felt she was enthusiastic and kind. She and her husband had been married for over 10 years, and their relationship was still as sweet as when they first married. She loved her 2 daughters as much as her husband did. When chatting with neighbors, she often said that she would try to work hard because her daughters were still young, and there would be many expenses in the future. The Inoue family was once the image of happiness and harmony in the eyes of their neighbors. Every weekend they would drive to travel together. Who could have imagined that in just one night, fate could turn so cruelly? Mr. and Mrs. Inoue had passed away forever, leaving behind 2 orphaned daughters. Even the beloved cat on the first floor did not escape the clutches of fate. The pain of losing their loved ones so suddenly and violently plunged Keiko and Riko into deep sorrow. This peaceful area had never witnessed such a brutal crime. Faced with this tragedy, the police force quickly launched an investigation, determined to bring the perpetrator to light, restore justice for the Inoue family, and alleviate the fear that was enveloping the community. Although when reporting to the police, Keiko had said that a burglar had broken into the house based on the fire situation, the police believed that the perpetrator might have planned in advance, deliberately setting the fire to destroy evidence. Therefore, they began to investigate the social relationships of the Inoue couple. Surprisingly, just 9 hours after the incident occurred, at 7 p.m. on the same day, the police received a confession call. The man on the other end of the line, crying, said, "I killed someone." After receiving the report, the police asked him to stay where he was, not to move, then quickly set out to the location where he was, which was a patrol police station about 18.6 miles from the victim's house. It turned out that this man intended to go there to turn himself in, but found that there were no police on duty, so he called the police station. The police quickly arrived at the scene. The man had driven there himself, and there was nothing notable in the car. On his face were clear marks from the incident, obvious burns, and the little finger on his right hand appeared to be broken. He seemed very emotionally unstable and moved stiffly. When the police asked about the specific situation, he stammered and couldn't speak clearly. The interrogation lasted until 2 a.m. the next day before yielding results. From the fragmented confessions, a horrifying picture gradually emerged. Afterward, the police arrested the man on charges of premeditated murder. He was quickly taken for treatment to prepare for the next steps of the investigation and trial process. 1 day later, after completing treatment, at 2 p.m., this man was taken away by the police. At the same time, the media also reported on this incident. According to the information, the suspect was 19 years old, a high school student. According to Japanese law at that time, 20 years old was considered an adult, so he was still considered a minor. When facing the public, the police had to cover his face. The windows of the police car were also covered with black curtains to prevent others from photographing his face. Moreover, in media reports, all personal information that could identify the suspect, such as his real name, place of residence and photos, was not allowed to be disclosed. In the Kofu arson case, because the suspect's personal information was not disclosed, in just a few short days, public curiosity quickly reached its peak. All kinds of rumors spread wildly on the internet. Regarding the suspect's real name, some said his surname was Okamoto, others said it was Yoshida. Some said he had blonde hair, a fierce face, and looked very scary. In the rumors, the surname Miura was also mentioned many times. In Kofu City, there were many vineyard managers with the surname Miura. Therefore, their reputation was also negatively affected, leading to a decrease in the vineyard's revenue. In a short time, social media was flooded with photos of suspected perpetrators, causing a wave of suspicion and seriously affecting the lives of many innocent people. A rumor spread on the internet that was even harder for the public to accept, claiming that the suspect was a schoolmate of Keiko. The high school they were attending was Yamanashi Prefectural Central High School, a boarding school with half of its students working part-time while studying. As rumors spread, the atmosphere in the school became tense. Students began to speculate about the identity of the suspect. Anyone who had been absent recently became a subject of suspicion. In addition to being curious about the suspect's identity, the public also wanted to know what deep grudge he had against the Inoue family. Regarding the motive for the crime, one of the parties involved, Keiko, did not want to disclose. Therefore, more rumors emerged. Among the rumors that were put forward, a hypothesis emerged suggesting that the suspect was someone who had pursued Keiko. According to this, the man had been prevented by Keiko's parents when trying to approach her at school, leading to resentment and determination for revenge. Another stream of public opinion made more serious accusations about Keiko, claiming that she had a promiscuous lifestyle and maintained multiple ambiguous relationships. They speculated that the suspect, one of Keiko's pursuers, upon learning the truth, felt he had misplaced his affections, thus leading to frenzied revenge. Some even suspected that Keiko was involved in this case because she was not injured. There were even extreme opinions suspecting Keiko of being an accomplice in the case based on the fact that she was not injured. However, the truth about Keiko was completely opposite to these malicious rumors. From a young age, Keiko had been famous for her pure beauty with beautiful big round eyes, a renowned beauty in Kofu City. In addition, she could play the piano and paint, like a main character in a shoujo manga. At school, Keiko had a gentle personality and was polite to everyone. Although she initially had difficulty in communication, with continuous efforts, Keiko gradually became more confident and lively, getting along better with her classmates. Not only focusing on studying, Keiko also actively participated in extracurricular activities. She was an energetic member of the baseball club and the drama club, where she showed her passion for scriptwriting. With excellent academic achievements and a high sense of responsibility, Keiko quickly became an important member of the student council. She became an ideal role model, an inspiration for many classmates. Although admired and pursued by many people, she always declined. When tragedy struck her family, Keiko suddenly became the focus of unwanted attention. The pain of losing both parents was enough to make her ache, but the wave of concern and comments from the public made her feel suffocated. Social media was flooded with opinions about her, even from complete strangers. The pressure of public opinion weighed heavily on Keiko's shoulders, making her unable to concentrate on her studies, severely disrupting her life. Just 9 days after the tragedy, when the police investigation was still in a sensitive stage, a newspaper published information about the suspect, disregarding regulations protecting minors. This action not only sparked controversy about journalistic ethics, but also showed signs of violating the law. Notably, this was not the first time this newspaper had crossed the boundaries of professional ethics. In the past, they had repeatedly disclosed information about juvenile offenders, despite legal regulations. However, they still insisted that, considering the fact that this crime was premeditated and had very serious consequences, they decided to report it this way. Just a few months before the incident occurred, the Japanese parliament had passed a bill lowering the age of adulthood from 20 to 18. Along with that, the juvenile law was also amended, creating the concept of special minors for those aged 18 to 19, with stricter penalties. According to the new law, after a prosecutor indicts a special minor, the press is allowed to disclose the identity and image of the subject. However, the newspaper's action was still considered to be beyond legal limits for two main reasons. First, at that time, the investigation was still ongoing, and there had been no official indictment decision. Second, these new regulations would only take effect from the following year. Therefore, this newspaper was publicly criticized by many Japanese bar associations. However, thanks to this article, more details about the case were revealed. The suspect's name was Yuki Endo, 19 years old, a high school student, a schoolmate of Keiko, and he was also a member of the student council. After getting to know Keiko, he actively created many opportunities to interact, and was very attentive to her every action. 12 days before the incident occurred at 1 p.m., Yuki had blocked Keiko at the bicycle parking lot, and confessed his feelings to her. To express his affection, he gave her a Tiffany necklace. But Keiko gently declined, explaining that they didn't really know each other yet, and she didn't want to enter a relationship with someone she wasn't truly familiar with. However, Keiko's rejection did not make Yuki give up. A few days later, one day after school, he secretly followed Keiko home and thus learned her home address. In the following days, he continued to harass Keiko, inviting her to dinner and sending some luxury items to her home without permission. Until October 7th, because of being harassed to the point where she had no other choice, Keiko reluctantly agreed to have dinner with him. But in Yuki's eyes, this was a sign that Keiko had accepted his feelings. Therefore, that night, he was very proactive. However, this dinner only made Keiko feel more that they were not compatible and could not date. The next day, Keiko sent a message to Yuki, once again clearly stating that she would not date him. After that, she blocked contact with him. Yuki became furiously angry when rejected again, and finally went down the path of crime. When the media reported, people learned about the cause and course of events. Situations like this are not uncommon in the school environment, so the case attracted special attention from public opinion. At the same time, through Yuki's confession, the police also gradually clarified the course of events. 4 days before the incident occurred, on October 8th, Yuki had discovered that the message he sent to Keiko was still unread. At this point, he understood that he had been rejected once again, and felt extremely angry. The last time he was rejected when confessing his love, he had been mocked by those around him, saying that he didn't know his own limits. Being rejected multiple times made him unable to bear it anymore. In his anger, a crazy idea was born in his mind. He began to harbor a plan to kidnap Keiko, take her to a remote, deserted place. In his delusion, he wanted to interrogate Keiko about why she rejected his feelings, as if she owed him an explanation. Not stopping there, Yuki also nurtured the intention of imprisoning Keiko, wanting her to taste the consequences of rejecting his feelings. These dark thoughts kept swirling in Yuki's head. He went to a department store to buy pliers, a drill, and other tools, intending to use them to pull out nails and stab needles into Keiko's body. He had found an abandoned house near his great-grandmother's house, considering it a perfect hideout to carry out his criminal acts. The purchase of a sleeping bag and stockpiling of dry food showed that Yuki had prepared for a long-term scenario, ready to hide to avoid police pursuit. After preparations were complete, he began to closely monitor Keiko's every move at school, waiting for an opportunity to act. One day, Yuki discovered Keiko being intimate and walking very close to another male student looking like a couple. Seeing this scene, the flames of jealousy and anger burned away Yuki's reason. He immediately abandoned the kidnapping plan and decided to use a more cruel method to leave Keiko with an unforgettable memory for life. However, the male friend who had a close relationship with Keiko was actually a female student, dressed in somewhat masculine clothing. After deciding on the new plan, Yuki went to buy several different types of knives, a 7-inch cleaver and a fruit paring knife. He also went online to watch videos on how to explode gas canisters and break windows without making noise. In the following days, he successively prepared window-breaking tools, 3 lighters, and 9 gas canisters. On October 7th, Yuki didn't go to school, which made his classmates feel very strange because he had never been absent before. Some speculated that the failed confession had affected him. However, no one could have imagined what horrific events would unfold the next day. In the early hours of October 12th, Yuki drove with all the tools to Keiko's house, intending to end the life of the girl he liked, and her family with his own hands. At 3:20 a.m., he arrived in front of Keiko's house. He paced back and forth outside the house, hesitating for 10 minutes, finally determined to act. He taped up a window on the ground floor, then broke the glass to break in. During this process, he did not make much noise. Then, Yuki sneaked into the bedroom on the first floor where Keiko's parents were sleeping. When the couple heard the noise, they drowsily woke up to see what was happening. But taking advantage of their not being fully awake, Yuki stabbed Mr. Morigi. The victim both resisted and called for his wife, but the attacker did not stop. When Mrs. Aki woke up, the scene before her eyes terrified her. She didn't have time to think much, but instinctively ran out of the room. At this point, Yuki had drawn another knife, chasing after her while swinging both knives in his hands. Eventually, Mrs. Aki could not escape the clutches of the killer. She reflexively raised her hands to block the attack, but it was all in vain. Soon after, she also collapsed on the floor. At this point, Yuki discovered Riko coming downstairs. He wounded Riko but didn't chase after her anymore. Instead, he lit the oil in the lighter, igniting the gas canisters, intending to burn the whole house in a sea of flames. But he himself was also injured in the process. After finishing these actions, Yuki left the scene. But he didn't run away, instead standing outside with the neighbors who had discovered the situation, watching the flames rise. During this time, a police officer suddenly approached to question him, causing him to panic and flee, driving to an empty house 18.6 miles 30 kilometers away, where he had initially planned to kidnap Keiko. By evening, feeling desperate about everything, he decided to turn himself in. On the day of the incident, Keiko was supposed to represent high school students in giving a speech at a youth education seminar. Her parents were proud and expected her to have a bright future. But this fire had completely destroyed that speech, while also destroying a happy family. During the police interrogation, Keiko kept blaming herself. She said that she should have been the target of revenge. Why wasn't she targeted? It was because of her that her innocent parents and sister were implicated, yet she was the only one unharmed. On April 8, 2022, the Kofu City Prosecutor's Office indicted Yuki Endo. He was charged with premeditated murder and arson. At this time, the revised juvenile law had also officially taken effect. Media outlets rushed to report on this case. Much information related to the suspect was brought to light. According to the information, Yuki Endo's birth name was Yuki Watanabe, then 19 years old, living with his parents in Chuo City near Kofu City. From a young age, he had an introverted personality, often hiding and not daring to come out when guests visited the house. When he was in second or third grade of elementary school, Yuki's father was arrested for stealing 2 water heaters from a water supply company. Unexpectedly, this news quickly spread in the elementary school. His classmates hated him, didn't want to play with him, and even bullied him. After that, Yuki became very afraid of going to school. This incident also became a deep wound in his heart. Over time, his classmates gradually forgot about that shameful incident, but Yuki's family experienced major upheavals. His parents often argued in front of him, even physically fighting, throwing objects at each other, sometimes even using knives to fight. When he was in 5th grade, another incident occurred. A close friend suspected Yuki of stealing his game card. Even after searching Yuki's entire house, they couldn't find it. He repeatedly assured his mother that he didn't steal. His mother in her heart also didn't believe her son would do something like his father. She thought this was because the friend's parents didn't want their child to play with Yuki, so they deliberately framed him. Later, when Yuki was 12 years old, his mother had him transfer schools. But the parents of that friend had told others about this incident, angrily saying that this child would be spoiled by his mother's indulgence. After transferring schools when he was in 6th grade, Yuki became obsessed with the manga series Death Note. He even told those around him that just by writing someone's name down, you could eliminate troublesome people, and that feeling must be very interesting. He also wanted to do such things. That year, conflicts in Yuki's family became more serious, and finally his parents divorced. After that, his mother quickly remarried. When he was 13, he changed his surname from Watanabe to Endo. Not long after, this new family had a new member, and he had a younger sister. Yuki's stepfather was a wealthy man. As a result, his life became more affluent. Before he even graduated from elementary school, he had his own iPhone. He even brought an expensive golf club to school to show off, making many classmates feel envious. However, the relationship between Yuki and his stepfather was actually not good. Once when he was playing by the river, he accidentally fell into the water. His stepfather stood beside watching him struggle, even laughing. After rescuing him, his stepfather said, "Who do you think allowed you to survive?" From then on, Yuki became afraid of his stepfather. At 13, Yuki entered a junior high school in Kofu City and joined the tennis club. In the summer of his first year of junior high, the school organized an outdoor activity in a forest. At that time, Yuki experienced rare moments of joy. Not long after that, he lost a tennis match. After being severely reprimanded by the coach, he decided to leave the tennis club. Due to the newborn sister, the family apartment became crowded. Therefore, his stepfather rented an additional apartment next door and let Yuki live there alone. His mother also agreed. Sometimes he could hear the laughter of his stepfather and others from across the wall, making him feel as if that family only had the three of them, while he was just an extra. However, this life didn't last long. When he was 14, his stepfather passed away due to illness. Throughout his junior high school years, Yuki had almost no presents and hardly any friends. When he entered high school, he wanted to change his past self, hoping that in the future he could find a good job. Therefore, he began to act positively. Yuki showed a strong determination to improve himself and integrate into the school environment. Never being late for school and always taking detailed notes showed a high sense of discipline. Despite facing difficulties due to a weak foundation, leading to having to repeat a year, Yuki still persevered in his efforts. This effort was recognized by both teachers and the student council leadership. However, Yuki's behavior outside of school hours showed worrying signs about his mental health. Suddenly laughing loudly for no reason, saying he thought of something funny, then mumbling to himself, made others unable to understand. Sometimes he also participated in school radio broadcasts. On the radio, his clear and energetic voice showed good communication potential. However, when he left this microphone, Yuki became silent and withdrew again. This contrast was further highlighted in the school's cultural activities. While friends were enthusiastically discussing, Yuki sat alone, isolated, intently folding papers into darts. After falling in love with Keiko Inoue, a beautiful and excellent girl, Yuki was eager to express himself. He also joined the baseball club that Keiko was participating in, then participated in club activities with her. Later, thanks to the trust of the former student council president, along with having few competitors, he was chosen as the new student council president. This made those around him feel surprised, because he was originally a quiet person who didn't like to stand out. After being elected as student council president in April 2021, 19-year-old Yuki Endo began to pay attention to his appearance. He trimmed his eyebrows, changed his hairstyle, hoping this would make Keiko notice him more. His new appearance surprised everyone, praising him for becoming more handsome. During that year's school cultural festival, due to being in the COVID-19 period, Yuki, along with some other students, invented a series of disinfectant spray bottles. The packaging had a picture of a legendary bird. These disinfectant spray bottles were all given to the school. The legendary bird mentioned is the two-headed bird recorded in a book about epidemics in Japan in 1858. According to legend, it was the divine crow of the three Kumano mountains, with one black head and one white head, and both feet were black. According to records, in 1857, a two-headed bird appeared on Mount Hakusan in Ishikawa Prefecture. People believed that an epidemic would break out the following year, but those who worshipped it would avoid the epidemic. Due to the outbreak of the epidemic, The image of this bird was introduced by the Yamanashi Prefectural Museum in April 2020 and became a hot topic. In October of that year, during the epidemic prevention period, the disinfectant spray bottle invented by Yuki and his friends was highly appreciated by the authorities and was published in local newspapers. He thought these achievements could win Keiko's affection. However, the reality was not so. At home, Yuki and his mother had an argument about employment after high school graduation. His mother wanted to arrange a job for him, but he didn't like it. He felt that if he did that job, his efforts in high school would be in vain. Even if he earned money from that job, his mother would take it away. After being rejected by Keiko, Yuki completely lost his reason and went down a path of no return. 2 years after the incident occurred, the trial of Yuki Endo was held at the Kofu City Court. Yuki Endo was charged with premeditated murder, arson, and other charges. In court, when faced with the prosecutor's accusations, Yuki always remained silent. The defense argued that during his upbringing, he was unfortunate, which affected his personality, leading to mental disorders, rendering him incapable of criminal responsibility. However, later a psychiatrist appointed by the prosecutor conducted a psychological assessment of Yuki Endo and rejected this view. The case went through 21 court sessions and ended on January 18, 2024. This time Yuki Endo was no longer silent. He admitted his crimes and showed remorse, but did not want to apologize to the victims. Keiko Inoue appeared in court via video connection and expressed her opinion. She always blamed herself for implicating her family. Regarding how the defendant Yuki Endo would be sentenced due to fear of retaliation and to protect her sister Riko, she didn't say much. After the trial, the court announced the verdict. The defendant Yuki Endo was guilty of premeditated murder, arson, and other charges, and was sentenced to death. After the trial, the defense disagreed with the verdict and appealed to the Tokyo High Court. However, just 1 day later, at Yuki Endo's own request, the lawyer withdrew the appeal. The media reported on Yuki Endo's death sentence. Only his mother was in extreme pain. This was the first time in Japanese judicial history that a special minor had been sentenced to death, so it attracted much attention. Everyone sympathized with the two sisters Keiko and Riko, who lost their parents in just one night. They also lamented that the theft by Yuki Endo's father when he was young had left a lifelong shadow on him. Most of the public believed that the death sentence was deserved, as it was the best possible consolation for the victims. And that is the story for today. What are your thoughts on this case? Please share in the comment section below the video. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos.